Hello, and a happy new year to you all. Welcome to 2019. With you this evening is your mental health practitioner, Justine Nakimuli Kigozi of Mind, Body and Soul. Thank you to all my followers on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. This evening, we will be talking about mental health in Black and ethnic minority communities. For those who follow me, you already know that my passion is to address mental health awareness in Black and ethnic minority communities. Some of you have listened to my audios if you come from Uganda, because they are all in my local dialect. So we will be doing some audios in English to support other Black and ethnic minority communities, plus Ugandans who do not understand Luganda. This evening, we want to talk about the journey of mental health. What is mental health? Who can suffer mental health? How does mental health present in terms of symptoms? I must highlight that we, including me, Black and ethnic minority communities, have a different understanding of mental illness and a different presentation to mental health symptoms. Unfortunately, to some people, they still believe that mental health is a myth. Some people still refer to it as people acting out. And some people still believe in the ancient civilization model of demonic possession. Many people still believe that a mentally ill person has been possessed by the demon or demons. That's something I do not dispute, because I would like to respect everybody's understanding or opinion on something. However, I would like to highlight that there are other theories of mental illness, and please do not treat it as a myth, because if you do, it can be extremely overwhelming when it hits you unknowingly. It can be extremely overwhelming when it hits you unknowingly. We have statistics from Department of Health, statistics from World Health Organization. As early as 2018, 1 in 4 people in England every year suffer with a mental illness. However, when we look at the statistics for World Health Organization, global health, it's extremely concerning and overwhelming, because there's a crisis and an increase in the number of people with a mental illness in our African countries, in India, in other countries which are low-income countries. This is attributed to so many factors that we cannot go in at this moment in time. It's important that as we from low-income countries, Black and ethnic minority communities, we get a good understanding of mental illness. And I'm not saying that Europeans do not stigmatize mental illness. Of course they do. However, we are at a different level, because we've got our own religious and cultural perspective to mental illness. So this evening, I would like to highlight some very few current theories of mental illness. Current, because as mentioned, mental illness goes back to ancient civilization during Greece, Rome, India, and Egypt, because those are our legends when it comes to ancient civilization. They brought a theory that mental illness was spiritual. It was attached to demonic possession. Now you can see when I say that in Black and ethnic minority communities we are a little bit backwards in terms of contemporary mental health, because statistics shows that actually majority of us still hold that understanding. Majority of us stigmatize mental health and look at it as a taboo. Mental health has moved on from the likes of, we remember a theory around 400 BC when a physician discovered that mental health was related to chemical imbalance in the brain. Then we went to the 19th century of the guy I love so much, known as Freud, who discovered that the theory of talk therapies was something that can cure mental illness. He believed that suppressed emotions and feelings can actually cause mental illness. The same theory that has been borrowed by the psychopharmacological treatment of today. Going back to my topic, I will quickly go through current theories of mental illness, and I will use very easy English because I cannot do complicated English. I do easy English, things that are quite easy to understand. We have some biological theories, and one of those biological theories is genetics. The theory of genetics. The theory of genetics identifies some disorders that can be genetically passed on to generations. And one of these disorders is bipolar, which some people know as manic depression. The other one is schizophrenia, which identifies that actually an identical twin who has a twin that suffers with schizophrenia is 50% likely to also suffer with schizophrenia at some time in their lives. We've got the theory that identifies that anybody who has suffered dementia has a genetic predisposition to dementia. We have the theory that identifies obsessive disorders, panic disorders, anxieties, OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. These are things that are identified that if somebody in the family or one of your parents suffers with it, anybody genetically attached to you, then you're likely to suffer with some of those disorders, or someone in that lineage is likely to suffer one of these disorders. In my other podcasts, I'll be touching on symptoms of each of these mental health diagnoses and how they present. For those of you who listen to my audios in Luganda, I have already touched on how schizophrenia presents, how depression presents, how bipolar presents, how dementia presents. And this information is also available on our Mind, Body and Soul Facebook page. The other theory of biology is the neurotransmitter theory of chemical imbalance in the brain. We have researchers and writers who have discovered that for some reason, and this is a theory that is being used by most psychiatrists today, that for some reason some people are born with less neurotransmitters in the brain. They're either born with low serotonin and they'll need serotonin reactivators to improve their mood, or they have plenty of blockers, which is dopamine, and then dopamine blockage can cause them schizophrenia. Very attached to these are the symptoms of auditory hallucinations and visual hallucinations, where people see things or hear things or get paranoid about things. This is attached to dopamine blockage in the brain. That's another theory of biology. This is not genetically attached. For some reason, someone is born with low neurotransmitters. We've got the stress vulnerability factor. The stress vulnerability factor is very common, and it's very common to people who have suffered immigration processes. For some reason, internal factors react with the outside factors to cause anxiety, depression, and other panic disorders. For some reason, internal factors and external factors, where you look at the environment and everything going on in your life, can work together to cause depression, anxiety, insomnia, which is lack of sleep, and other panic disorders. Lack of appetite, anger, frustration, tearfulness, and at a very high level, people can suffer with psychotic depression or acute psychotic depression. These are incidents where you find that somebody can suffer with a mental illness once, get treated in hospital, and they never get it ever again. It could be related to stress vulnerability. We have medical conditions, physical medical conditions. Some of these are bacterial or viral infections, metabolic illnesses. We've got certain medications that can cause psychosis, delirium. We've got street drugs. Street drugs include cocaine, heroin, cannabis, legal highs, ecstasy, amphetamines, name it all. I will make an audio on street drugs and addictions. For those who have listened to my Luganda audios, there is an audio on drugs and alcohol. It's important. And if you can visit Mind, Body and Soul Facebook page, you will also see that there's some written information on street drugs. Injuries, road traffic accidents, injuries to the brain can also cause mental illness. In elderly people, these people are particularly vulnerable to mental illness due to the changing body chemistry. Things like fever, dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and even some antibiotics or aspirin can cause short-term mental illness to elderly people. Certain diseases like AIDS, if somebody's been HIV positive and develops into full-blown AIDS, They are likely to develop dementia, depression, delirium, psychosis, and this is coupled with anxiety, aggression, and a lot of other things that can happen when somebody suffers with AIDS. We have a theory of neuropathology. Neuropathology refers to the damage of a brain tissue. If a brain tissue is damaged, that is likely to cause mental illness. This is also very common in elderly people. And this is why before you diagnose an elderly person with mental illness, you've got to be able to carry out a few scans. It can be an MRI scan, it can be a CT scan, and a few other tests to help you identify if this is an organic cause. You've got to be able to rule that out. The other cause of mental illness is nutrition. For most people, we always say, you are what you eat. A lot of people lack certain vitamins in the brain or in the body. Vitamin B is a vital and essential vitamin that people lack. And people could suffer with depression, anxiety, insomnia, psychosis, dehydration, depending on how they feed, depending on their diet. So we need to be able to look at that as well. We've got psychological or interpersonal theories. We go back to our friend Freud, who taught us how to relate to ourselves as human beings. Psychodynamic theories are related to mental health symptoms of personality disorder. This can lead to emotional irregulation. This can lead to cognitive impairment, depression, anger, and this is triggered also. This also triggers things like PTSD, which is post-trauma stress disorder. A lot of people who have been involved in wars and torture and abuse tend to suffer this because their internal emotions tend to work with the external factors to trigger depression, anger, psychosis, insomnia, and a lot of these mental health symptoms. We again look at trauma-related illness. This can be things like the dissociative disorder. Again, post-traumatic disorder. This can be through, we know very well that war veterans suffer with some of these, but we also know that, especially in our communities as we live, children are sexually abused at a very young age, physically abused, emotionally abused, and they may not discuss this. They may not talk to anybody about this. And as time runs on, they may struggle with these emotions. And as a result, they could start self-harming, they could develop anorexia, they could develop bulimia, they start blaming themselves and start suffering with all sorts of mental health disorders. So, my dear followers, friends, family, and members of the public. As you can hear, there's a lot of theories attached to mental illness, and we need to be able to understand, to know these theories. If we know these theories, then knowledge is power, because that means we can detect these symptoms at a very early age, work on these symptoms so that we put an end to the increase in mental health problems in Black and ethnic minority communities.
This internet connection isn't strong enough at the moment.